Arirang Prime.
Night, saying the goal is to disarm Iraq and free its strategic orbit, has finally launched a strike against Iraq, taking its site just south of the seaport city of Basra.
As a journalist, I became fascinated with solving a mystery about my grandfather and discovering about a strange affair which had been hidden for more than a century. My grandfather, Henry Cockburn, was appointed an acting minister in Korea in 1905, but retired very suddenly in 1908, retiring just at the moment when he could have expected to enjoy high rank. Why this happened is explained by the tangled history of Britain's diplomatic relations with Korea, which opened 130 years ago. Ceremonies marking the 130th anniversary of the Korea-UK diplomatic relations are taking place in both Korea and the United Kingdom. But do they really know about the tumultuous events that had happened since 1883, before Korea and the United Kingdom became such close friends today?
I didn't know, actually.
I don't know too much about the history of that story. I think it's great. I hope there'll continue to be a good relationship between the countries.
I did not know much about it myself until I discovered the strange story of my grandfather, Henry Cockburn, and his years as senior British diplomat in Korea. But what really compelled him to retire? I wanted to find out the truth by looking into my grandfather's assignment in Korea. This is the National Archives, where old diplomatic records and government files are kept. Where shall I begin? Patrick Cockburn.
Patrick Cockburn, yes.
Doing anything on me?
Okay.
I was looking at some old MI5 security files when it crossed my mind that it might be interesting to look at the Foreign Office papers marked Korea for the relevant period to see if they contained any clue as to what happened. One of the first papers I found in Kew is the transcript of a telegram entitled Rendition of Korean from Henry Cockburn to Sir Claude MacDonald, the British ambassador in Tokyo, warning that if it became known that we had handed over a prisoner to the Japanese and that he had subsequently been subject to conditions similar to those which obtained in the case of Yang, the worst impression would be created. My grandfather's telegram was part of an increasingly angry debate within the British Foreign Office. The British had their own imperial prestige to consider and could not allow the Japanese to have everything their own way. But it wasn't easy to make a decision that could jeopardize the British-Japanese alliance over a single torture victim. In the end, Henry was ordered to hand over Yang to the Japanese, but he could not accept this and left Korea within days. Just who was this Yang Ki-tak, a man on whom my grandfather staked his career? So does this.
These. Okay, you have your stuff. You're going incredibly early.
Well, it's such a long way to Korea that I don't want to miss the plane, so I'd prefer to wait at the airport.
Fair enough. Well, I did say 10:30. Right, okay.
Well, goodbye.
Okay, darling. Well, have a great time.
Why did he do it? Why did my grandfather put his career on the line for a total stranger? When Henry came to Korea in 1905, he may not have realized he was arriving at a turning point in the history of the country. As Henry took over as acting minister, Japan was beginning to end Korea's independence. Not surprisingly, Koreans resisted, and those who tried to drive out the Japanese occupational forces were massacred by Japanese troops. At the time, there were consulates in the United States, the British Empire, Germany, France, Russia, and Belgium in Seoul, but none had protested against Japan's ill treatment of Koreans. Even before Japan forced upon Korea a treaty turning Korea into a Japanese protectorate in 1905, both the United States and the British Empire had recognized Japan's control over Korea by concluding the secret Taft-Katsura Agreement and the Second UK-Japan Alliance Pact. The Treaty of Portsmouth, a peace treaty that ended the Russia-Japanese War, and by which Russia sanctioned Japan's absolute influence over Korea. My grandfather described Korea in his report to Foreign Minister Lord Lansdowne in London as a pawn in a game of chess that has been the centre of interest solely by reason of its position relative to the pieces of the great powers. I find it strange that my grandfather's efforts to save Yang Ki-tak should lead me to meet his granddaughter over 100 years later.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I hope you did not have to wait long.
Oh, not that long.
Professor Yang Jun-ja, the granddaughter of Yang Ki-tak.
10 minutes late. I learned about even my grandfather. Very little. Because my father was captured by North when Korean War. I was 7 years old, so I didn't hear about grandfather.
My grandfather left his job. He resigned because of this business with your grandfather, because he was forced to hand him over to the Japanese. So he resigned immediately from the Foreign Office. It's fine.
My organization is a very unique organization. What happened is we are Association for Korean Independent Patriots. During Japanese occupation, we had patriots who fought against Japan for independence, and also the descendants like me and my wife.
These are documents I got from the National Archives in Kew in London. Your grandfather was very ill because there wasn't enough oxygen in the cell with all these people.
He was in very bad condition.
Yeah, and the room was too small to stand up. Then my grandfather went to the Japanese resident, who was the Japanese official in control, and complained.
우리 할아버지 너무 가엾다. 너무 가엾었어. 나라를 위해서 했었는데 그렇게 일본 사람한테 당해가지고 거의 죽을 정도로 너무 감사하고 이런 걸 찾았다는 자체가 그냥 웬만한 사람이 할 수 있는 일은 아닌 것 같아요. Thank you so much. I cannot express your effort.
My father knew that his father had resigned from the Foreign Office at the age of 49 because he opposed British support for the Japanese occupation of Korea.
Yes.
But he didn't know the exact reason. My father was a very small boy.
Oh, Henry Cockburn, yeah.
My grandfather, Henry Cockburn, received a strange letter only 10 days after he had arrived in Korea. It was a will written by Min Yong-hwan, a high-ranking officer in King Gojon's court. Having committed suicide as an act of final resistance against Japan, in the letter Min pleaded with the British to help Korea protect its independence against Japan's colonial ambition. Min Yong-hwan was the first Korean to travel around the world. When he visited Great Britain in 1896, he wrote his impressions of the country as "This is a tranquil world. The country is peaceful and its people are comfortable. Palaces, museums, schools, interesting sights, and old historical sites here are the best among all the countries. I'm sorry that I cannot see them all due to my tight schedule. It is evident that even over a very short visit, Min had gained very favourable impressions about Great Britain." A solemn funeral procession brought countless Koreans to mourn the tragic death of the 44-year-old Min. The funeral may have compelled Henry to ponder what the future held for Korea, Great Britain and himself. The also-protracted Treaty of 1905 had shamed Min Yong-wan into taking his own life. It negatively affected Henry Cockburn as well, if not as tragically as Min. He ended up being demoted from acting minister to consul general. Henry was prepared to accept that the Japanese Empire worked like the British Empire. He did not object to empires in principle, but he was not prepared to allow the Japanese to torture a man to death or keep him in conditions likely to kill him, without doing everything he could to stop them.
Welcome.
For the past 40 years, Professor Chong Chin-sok has been studying Korean contemporary history between 1904 and 1910, which approximately coincides with my grandfather's tenure in Korea.
You see that the protectorate treaty from Japan to Korea, so all the diplomatic legations are retreat from Seoul. Only the consulate is remained there. So your grandfather came to charge the affair, and he must change his position. He doesn't want to reluctantly do it.
Obviously, Henry was upset by having to deal with more junior Japanese officials.
Henry must accept the situation. After that, the Bethl case and the Yang case was called. First trial to Bethl. He only, in his mind, he is the Bethl's side.
Ernest Thomas Bethl came to Korea as a correspondent for the Daily Chronicle in 1904, when the Russo-Japanese War erupted. As soon as Bethl arrived in Korea, he filed an exclusive entitled "Korean Emperor's Palace in Ruins." This article made the top of the 5th page of the Daily Chronicle's April 16th edition. Bethl had written that the fire that had gutted Yongun Palace on the evening of April 14th was set intentionally by Japan. He was fired from the Daily Chronicle after the article was published. Bethl later told foreign journalism in Korea about the incident, claiming that he was instructed by the Daily Chronicle to write his article in line with the Chronicle's pro-Japanese policy. But when he saw Korea's situation, he could not in good conscience blindly follow the paper's instructions. So he tendered his resignation as correspondent, and the Chronicle fired him. After he was laid off from the Daily Chronicle, Bethl founded on July 18, 1904, Daehan Mail Shinbo and the Korean Daily News, with Korean journalists and independence activists Yang Ki-tak, Park Un-sik, and Shin Che-ho. Bethl served as publisher and editor, Yang as editor-in-chief and operation manager, and Park and Shin as editorial writers. They denounced the Japanese imperial government were trying to colonize Korea. After launching Daehan Mail Shinbo, Bethl brought his wife Marie and young son to Korea. I wonder if I would have brought my family over. Even though Korea was under harsh Japanese rule, he wanted to settle down in Korea with his family.
All the buildings are around here. There is the Korea Daily News building. They moved 3 times. The first time over 1 or 2 kilometers from here. Second time here. It was the most important period that there was here.
This is the Royal Palace here.
Yeah, Royal Palace there. Kojong's place. From here, Bethl sees that over there, and Korean old army killed by the Japanese armies. So he saw there around over there. Korea Daily News, Bethl wrote about the story.
On August 1st, 1907, armed forces of the Great Korean Empire were forcefully disbanded by the Japanese imperial government. Korean soldiers resisting the breakup were massacred by the Japanese army. Bethl witnessed the bloodbath from the Daehan Mail Shinbo building, across from the Tokso Palace. He condemned the ruthlessness of the Japanese army through the Korea Daily News and Daehan Mail Shinbo articles, triggering nationwide anti-Japanese movements by Korean civilian forces. The first Japanese resident general to Korea, Prince Ito Hirobumi, reportedly lamented that one line from a newspaper article turned out to be more powerful than hundreds of Ito's own words. Japan then asked the British government to deport Bethl to shut down his newspaper. If the British government could not punish Bethl effectively, Japan would have no other recourse than to bar Bethl from selling the papers or to handle it as a police matter. In the wake of Japan's threats, the British government decided to handle the Bethl matter as according to British laws. If Britain allowed Japan to deport Bethl, it would be tantamount to voluntarily giving up its extraterritorial rights in Korea. So, British Foreign Minister Sir Edward Grey ordered the British ambassador to Japan, Sir Claude MacDonald, to indict Bethl immediately. Henry Cockburn, who was demoted to Consul General from acting minister following Korea's loss of diplomatic rights, had to speed along Bethl's trial. It was once the British legation in Korea, but the name was changed to the Consul General when Korea's diplomatic rights were wrested away by Japan. A little more than a century later, the British Embassy building still stands on the same spot. The building was built in 1890, after Korea and Britain had formed diplomatic ties. Did he foresee the trouble that was about to engulf him? How conscious are Koreans of sort of past connections with?
Well, we've got a very close political relationship between the United Kingdom and Korea. We're working very closely together on the United Nations Security Council. We have peacekeepers around the world who are working together. We work very closely together on issues like international development and climate change. So across a broad range of interests, Korea and the UK, our positions are very closely aligned.
What would the present-day ambassador have done if he was in the same predicament as my grandfather back then? What would I have done if I were in his shoes?
Thank you very much.
Bethl was tried at the consular building in Seoul. Consul General Henry Cockburn presided as acting judge. During the trial, when a Japanese residency general manager named Komatsu testified that he felt the editorials of Daehan Mail Shinbo and the Korea Daily News had disturbed peace and sparked anti-Japanese sentiments among the Koreans. But Henry said that what Komatsu felt cannot be taken as evidence, and that he only wanted facts. Henry sentenced Bethl to 6-month probation and ordered him to enter into a recognizance of £300 for his good behaviour. Bethl had to submit to the ruling. If he had appealed, the higher court in Shanghai would have to reverse the verdict, which was very unlikely, and Bethl would have to be deported. But after Bethel's trial, Henry again found himself in a quandary. On March 21, 1908, American diplomat and one-time foreign affairs advisor to the Korean Empire, Durham White Stevens, said in a press conference in the United States that the Korean imperial family and the government are corrupt and Koreans don't deserve to gain independence because they are too stupid. Enraged by Stevens' remarks, representatives of the Korean America asked Stevens to take back his comments, but they were flatly refused. 2 days later, on March 23rd, a Korean nationalist by the name of John Myong-un shot Stevens in San Francisco. But the shot misfired, and the two men ended up in a scuffle. Then Jang In-hwan, John's comrade, took a shot at Stevens, killing him. This story hit the headlines of the San Francisco Chronicle and other foreign media, and the United Korean, a Korean-American newspaper, called John and Jang patriotic heroes for shooting Stevens. The Japanese supreme authority in Korea, Prince Ito Hirobumi, requested Sir Claude MacDonald that the British deal with Bethl, claiming that his newspaper had incited Stevens' assassination and was thus partly responsible for his death. It was in essence an official complaint over Henry Coburn's verdict on Bethl. Henry was in an awkward spot. To make matters worse, Daehan Mail Shinbo resumed its scathing anti-Japanese attacks. Bethl was tried at the consular building in Seoul, accused of publishing the article with intent to incite unrest and disorder and hostility between the Korean government and its people. This was where Henry first saw journalist Yang Ki-tak, a witness for the defense. Fearing Japan's retribution, everyone was frightened of testifying as a witness for Bethl, but not Yang Ki-tak. My grandfather Henry was outraged that Yang, who had the courage to testify, should then be arrested by the Japanese. The 3-day trial ended with Bethl being convicted for a first-class misdemeanor and sentenced to 3 weeks in prison. Bethl left Korea on a British naval vessel headed for the British consular jail in Shanghai. On the day that Bethl was to return to Seoul, after serving his 3-week imprisonment in Shanghai, the editor-in-chief, Yang Ki-tak, was arrested. Upon hearing the news of Yang's arrest, Henry promptly asked the Japanese Residency General for Yang's release. Henry protested that the arrest was nothing but Japan's retaliation for Yang's testimony in Bethel's trial and was in violation of Article 3 of the British-Japan Alliance. Soidaman Prison History Hall. This prison was built by the Japanese in October 1908. It was where Koreans resisting Japan's colonial rule were incarcerated. Daehan Mail Shinmo successor, Alfred Marnham, visited Yang in prison.
There is Yang Ki-tak's prison record.
Marnham wrote a letter describing Yang's grim condition to Henry Cockburn. He said, "I have this afternoon been to see Mr. Yang Ki-tak at the jail. He is worn to a skeleton, being practically only skin and bone. He is a nervous wreck, is afraid to talk, and looks on the verge of a collapse. I learned that he, in company with 19 other men, is confined day and night in one small room, 14 feet by 12 feet. It is killing him by degrees. Henry Cockburn immediately wired British Foreign Minister Sir Edward Grey to tell of Yang's rapidly deteriorating health. Grey promptly telegraphed Ambassador MacDonald to demand the Japanese government allow medical treatment for Yang. MacDonald sent a letter on behalf of the British Foreign Office to Prince Ito, the Japanese Residency General in Korea. Concerned that Yang would cause a diplomatic rift between Japan and Great Britain, Ito ordered Yang to be quickly admitted to a hospital. But a Japanese prison guard mistakenly told Yang that he was free and released him onto the street. Yang then promptly fled to the Daihan Mail Shinbo office. Secretary Miura of the Japanese Residency General demanded Henry Cockburn hand over Yang, but he refused, saying that he couldn't do so without an order from the British government. Tokyo voiced its protest to both MacDonald and Grey, arguing that Britain had no jurisdiction over Yang's arrest. In return, the British Foreign Office presented a compromise drafted by Henry Cockburn. In exchange for handing Yang over to the Japanese, Japan should release him and halt the indictment. But Japan flatly refused Britain's proposal and opposed any preconditions attached to Yang's transfer. Unable to find any more excuses to deny Japan's demands, Grey sent a telegram to Cockburn ordering him to hand over Yang to the Japanese if he was well enough to move about. Henry Cockburn left Korea on September 15, 1908, on a train headed for Siberia. He failed to see his attempt to keep the journalist safe from the occupying forces would bear fruit. What could my grandfather have thought about on his train ride out of Korea? Did he for a moment regret offending his own government as well as Japan? Did he regret giving up his job? Probably not, since he was angered by what he saw as the failure of the British Foreign Office to support him against Japan. He died in 1927, long before Korea gained its independence. Bethl passed away even earlier than my grandfather. He was only 37 when he died of a heart attack on May 1st, 1909. Maybe brought on by the strain of imprisonment. Ernest Bethl, who loved Korea and staked all he had for Korea's independence. Countless Koreans came out to join the funeral procession and mourn his death. Letters mourning his death arrived from all over Korea. A man from Great Britain came to Korea to shed light into the darkness with a newspaper. His arrival was no coincidence, but I want to ask the heavens, why was his departure so sudden? Yang expressed his grief at Bethel's untimely death thus. Following Bethel's funeral, his wife Marie took her young son back to England. What she left behind in Korea was our husband's, Bethel's, a dream of an independent career, and our hopes of a long life with our husband.
Over here.
Yang is interred in a section marked for important figures of the Korean Provisional Government at Seoul National Cemetery. Today I came to his gravesite with his granddaughter.
Temporary government in Shanghai.
Oh, I see. No, I didn't realize.
He was died in China, but we brought his remains.
Is that when your mother and your husband went to China?
Oh, 1998. My mother and my husband, they went to China to find out my father's remains, some pieces of bones that they brought. Yeah. It was almost 60 years after he died. So there were small pieces of bones they brought. 할아버지, 제가 오랜만에 찾아왔죠. 오늘 정말 귀한 손님 모시고 왔어요. 할아버지 독립운동 하실 때 영국의 총영사인 헨리 코번 씨가 할아버지를 이렇게 도와주셨다면서요. 코번 총영사도 할아버지를 도와주고 그래서 사임을 하셨다고 얘기를 들었어요. 우리도 이런 새로운 사실을 알고 너무 가슴도 아프고 감개무량해요.
Would Henry have been surprised to find Yang Ki-tak, whom he so determinedly wanted to protect, regarded as a national hero? But he would probably have been pleased this happened. The Seoul Shinmun, the later incarnation of Daehan male Shinbo. A bust of Yang Ki-tak stands here, a man who fought against the Japanese imperial reign armed only with a pen. Before Bethl died, he supposedly held onto Yang's hand and said his last words. Even if I die, let Shinbo live on forever to save the Korean people. Honoring his words, Yang kept writing scorching editorials against the Japanese imperial government until Daehan male Shinbo was forcibly shot by the Japanese on August 28, 1910. Do these people remember the three men who struggled valiantly to keep this paper alive more than a century ago? Bethel's last wish was for the paper's continued service to the Korean people. Henry Cockburn certainly believed in defending the right of freedom of expression. I hope the Seoul Shinmun keeps that spirit alive for a long time.
I'm a big fan of Korean film. I think it's a really good way that we can get to know about kind of Korean society.
Korean films, like you don't need to you don't need to cut everything up. You can stretch a story and like get into the characters more and get into their psychology.
Having started back in 2003, the London Korean Film Festival already celebrates its 10th year.
From my point of view, one of the most exciting things about the London Korean Film Festival is that it gives me a chance to share some of my pleasures in Korean cinema with my friends and contemporaries in London. They also have the chance to see some of these great films that I've been enjoying so much in Korea.
Britons say they love Korean films for their originality and moving plots. Do they know about a man who lived a more dramatic life than those depicted in these films?
Really? Wow. Well, that person was probably very brave or her to do that. So yeah, wow. That's pretty amazing.
They're really proud about it, especially my friends also in Korea. They also told me about this.
there was a man who chose to die because he loved his country so much. His name was Yi Han-ung. Yi Han-ung travelled halfway across the globe and endured months of stormy weather to arrive in London in 1904. He was a diplomat like my grandfather. In London, as an acting minister of Korea, Yi had no time to enjoy the fascinating sights of a foreign land, because he had to work frantically to save his country deep in trouble. Yi received news in 1905 that Japan and Great Britain were about to conclude the second bilateral agreement that said Britain recognizes Japan's rights to guide, supervise, and protect all political, economic, and military affairs and interests in Korea. He desperately asked the British government to help Korea take back its sovereignty and tried to dissuade London from concluding the treaty on the grounds of its injustice, but failed to bring this about. Despondent over this failure, he took his own life on May 12, 1905. He was only 31.
This is the street in which the first Korean mission to the United Kingdom was established. It's not very far, in fact, from where the ambassador has his residence now. But it's a rather sad street, as you know, because in 1905, when the Japanese were consolidating their position in Korea, the man in charge here, Mr. Yi, in protest at what was happening, committed suicide. And there's the very house in which they lived. I'm not sure which flat they had, but there were two of them.
This is where Yi Han-ung ended his life. It used to house the first Korean legation in Britain.
There's 1,000 years of independent political entity.
Japan had taken away Korea's fiscal rights by that time, leaving the Korean legation only enough financial means to rent a single room. It is now an ordinary residence. Did his death make any difference to Korea-UK relations? So, were the British paying any attention to what he was saying?
It's hard to tell. It didn't get very much coverage. It didn't even get very much coverage in Korea. The Foreign Office sent its formal condolences and asked that those condolences be passed to His Majesty the King of Korea.
Although he could not stop the second treaty between Britain and Japan, his death helped launch a group of British-sponsored sympathizers to Korea's plight. The League of Friends of Korea was founded in the British Parliament in October 1920. Was Yi's death meaningful because a pro-Korean organization was established in Britain and friendly relations between the two countries developed? Whatever happened, Yi's death was sad and lonely. The remains of Yi Han-ung took the same long, rough sea route back to Korea.
Hello. Hello, how are you? Nice to meet you.
I'm meeting with Yi Han-ung's grandson.
Hello, how are you? Nice to... Oh, hi, I'm Patrick Cockburn.
He is more than twice Yi's age when he died. There seems to be little resemblance, but Yi Han-ung is the grandfather who died a tragic death.
There he is, yeah, well, that's interesting, yeah. And this is in London or this is here?
London, yeah.
Oh, this was on the coffin. His name?
Yi Han-ung, who the charge of him, died in London, 12 May 1905.
잘 유적됐다, 그지?
형님한테 한 유서랑 부인한테 쓴 유서.
This is a note he left to his older brother and wife before he died. It's very moving. Why did such a family man make this choice? I wanted to ask him, was your country that dear to you? It is very different from the present Korean embassy. Nice to meet you. How do you do?
I'm doing fine. This is the statue of Mr. Yi Han-ung, who committed suicide in 1905.
British and Korean relations have generally been good, but there have been moments when Britain was very interested in what's happened in Korea. How would you describe the extent of interest at the moment?
Right now, the relationship between the UK and Korea couldn't be better. By broad partnership, they mean the relationship between our two countries can cover a lot of areas from economy, trade, culture, science, technology, to diplomacy and everything. And by creative partnership, we mean that the UK and Korea can become very good partners in cultivating creative economy in both of our countries.
An interesting program is underway at the Korean Cultural Center. The K-pop Academy was opened as Korean pop music became popular in the UK and the rest of the world. It's not a course for just learning Korean pop songs, but also for studying Korean culture and history.
안녕하세요. 저는 안나 단리입니다. I actually blog for the Korean government. I blog for KoreaNet. So one of the reasons I come to the K-pop Academy is so that I can learn more about what other young British people think about Korean culture, and then I cover this on my blogs.
I spoke about my granddad participating in the Korean World War, so I wanted to learn more about what he was doing while out there, what he was serving. I also wanted to learn about the culture and stuff.
The program has already been going on for 4 years. What would Yi Han-ung have said if he saw these fans of Korean culture today? Nobody had listened when he was so frantically trying to win support for his country 100 years ago. The British naval vessel Flying Fish entered Jamalpo port in 1882 to sign a trade treaty with Korea.
When Vice Admiral Willis sailed to Korea, on board his ship was William George Aston, and he was the only person who was able to speak Korean in order to conduct any sorts of negotiations.
The two sides concluded the trade deal without a problem, but the British trade representatives faced big opposition when they returned home to get the pact ratified. The treaty was scrapped for having failed to represent the interests of British merchants. Although the treaty was rejected, the fateful connection built between the two countries in 1882 produced a tangible result in the following year. The bilateral trade treaty was concluded in Gyeongbok Palace in 1883. I'm going to see Bethel's granddaughter. There seems to be nobody here. Boing, boing. Patrick Cockburn.
Hello, Patrick.
Hi. What happened 100 years ago in Korea has led me to a meeting with Ernest Bethel's granddaughter Susan and her daughters in the heart of England.
Really, the first time that we ever knew anything about the way that the Koreans appreciated what my grandfather done for them. These medals, that have been given to my grandfather after his death.
Can I see the photograph?
And that's the... I was about 12 years old. My mother, we went... that just shows... And there was a book which my mother actually gave. You know, and she was fairly bitter, which anybody would be, about what had happened to her husband. You know, to lose your husband at 36 years old when you've only been married for a few years, and to have to bring, you know, a small child, as my father was only a young boy, to Yang Ti-ka, yeah. The Korean Daily News, the Korean editor, never ever forgot my grandfather after he died, and he still kept in touch with my grandmother even after she returned to England, and here's a postcard that he sent, and he was for many years in contact, you know, with my grandmother.
A small token of gratitude is what we need in this time and age.
It's about your grandfather.
Oh.
Which is one more volume.
Okay.
To your library.
Thank you very much. Now that's the back. Oh.
There he is.
Yeah, lovely picture.
Striking picture.
Yeah.
It's a good cover.
Yeah, very nice cover.
No, there is any.
Although a single book cannot contain all the love and dedication shown by your grandfather towards Korea, we hope the book serves as another reminder that you are a descendant of a truly great man and eases your longing for your grandfather. From the Koreans who want to cherish Ernest Bethl forever in their hearts. It's just so moving, and to know that, you know, what he did is still today so looked upon by the Korean descendants. There's something.
That's the same one.
That's the same
picture of there.
That's the same picture, yes.
It is interesting to meet people whose grandfather, like mine, were involved in this strange drama in Korea over a century ago. The high times of imperialism, the turbulent era of my grandfather Henry Cockburn, political radical and nationalist Yang Tak, journalist Ernest Bethl, and diplomat Yi Han-ung, appears to have come to an end, but it is surely right that their courage should be remembered and the role it played in creating a safer and better world.